Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Derek Main and this is Read the World. Today we are going to do something very different. We're going to have some tea. We are going to try to chill the fuck out. Because if you are anything like me, that has been almost impossible these days. So I'm going to force myself into some calm. Now, of course we're going to talk books, but specifically we're going to talk about reading, my reading, during these times. And I'm really interested in the comments to learn a little bit about your reading and how you've been coping, if there's anything in your reading life that has sufficiently distracted you. Anything that's blown you away, amazed you, brought you joy. It's hot. This is Lapsang. I don't pronounce that right, just like all of the authors that I feature on this channel. Because I grew up in North Carolina, rural North Carolina, in fact. I have a deep southern accent that I try very hard to mask. But Lapsang is my favorite. It's a little hot right now. I'm going to talk about what's been going on with my reading. So, let's start with a highlight. Booker Short Prize, Booker Prize short list, and all around, you've got to read it, hurricane season. Fernanda Melchor, translated by Sophie Hughes. This is the Fitzcarraldo editions. There is also a New Directions editions. Can you imagine, this is a Mexican writer, her first novel published, and it gets put out by New Directions and Fitzcarraldo, and she's on the short list right now for the Booker Prize. There's some joy in this world. There's a reason I'm not reviewing this. You're probably wondering, this is right up my alley. It was actually my #1 most anticipated book this year. It's because I did a podcast with Knowledge Lost. His podcast is Lost in Translations, and it'll be out soon. I think he actually, leading up to that, has an interview with the translator, Sophie Hughes. So, I saved all my thoughts and kind of stuff in a more conversational tone with Michael, and that was really enjoyable. So I finished hurricane season, and Fernanda Melchor was awesome enough, since she didn't really get a proper American rollout with the coronavirus. She did like this Twitter Q&A. And it was really cool. You could kind of ask her anything. And I had some worlds sort of collide. I had watched a virtual reading, I think the Sunday before I finished hurricane season. Maybe 2 Sundays before, doesn't matter. And one of the readers in the virtual reading was Grant Meyerhoff. This is the book of his that I ended up buying that he read from. It's ambient nonfiction called Peripatet, and it is from Inside the Castle. And it's a really, there's images, there's blocks of text that span the spine, some pages that are just really tiny. It's an experimental nonfiction text that I absolutely fell in love with and set me on kind of a different little reading path for a minute, which we'll talk about. But Grant in his writing had mentioned, because he writes a lot about other writers, he had mentioned Dennis Cooper. Well-known writer, just somebody I'd never read, never really been pushed to read. Well, In Fernanda Melchor's Q&A, someone asked her about writing influences, and she mentions Dennis Cooper. So, I've been reading Closer by Dennis Cooper, the first of that George Miles series. This one's out by Charco Press, and you'll notice there's no translator. There's no translator in Peripatet either, although maybe there should be, because is that weird? So a couple of books there, and we're going to get to a couple more too in my reading right now that are not translated literature, and this channel is about translated literature. So what's that about? Well, I typically try to review definitely one book a week. If I can get to a week, then you know it's a really good week. I would say out of every 5 books that I read, 4 right now are translated literature, so I still have some tiny little foothold in American fiction or English language fiction, although it's typically experimental. It's typically avant-garde, it's typical younger stuff that doesn't work all the time. You know, it's not the kind of stuff that you maybe sit in front of a camera and talk about. Not a lot of plots, you know, just the weird stuff. Speaking of that and the weird stuff, the host of that reading series, which if it's still on YouTube, I will put a link to it because I recommend that you watch it. I mean, it spans, I think, every continent but Antarctica as far as the readers, and it went on for maybe 4 hours or something with just different readers. It was a really, really cool event, and it was put on by Sublunary Press, who Joshua Rothes is the editor and publisher at Sublunary Press. And I got The Art of Great Dictators kind of right before lockdown, his book. It's a fragment. Excuse me. He's a fragmentist, and it is fragments on The Art of Great Dictators. What's really cool about this is I have, let's see here, it's signed and written in there. I have number 36 of 40. Not sure if you can see that. So this beautiful slim volume, there's only 40 of them in the world, and I am blessed, lucky enough to have them. His press, Sublunary Editions, actually has a new title that you should definitely be on the lookout for. History of Palms, I believe it is. Again, I'll put the link somewhere, but it looks like it's going to be really special, and that's their next release. This is an indie press that's really interesting to follow. One of the things they do once a month for $5 a month, they send you writing from all over the world, new work in your mailbox. You know, I'm addicted to literary magazines, and they're all online for the most part now, and that's cool, and the aesthetic you know, you can do a lot of creative things with it. But there's something so special about when he sends out these. These came last week. This is this month's. Overcliff, a story about Sylvia Warren. And Fear is the Knowledge of Tomorrow, a story by Yao Ye Shan, a poet, who was one of the readers in that series, and one of my favorites, actually. One of my favorite readers in that. So, that's one little path that I've been on. It led me another place too, which is a big, massive book that I'm going to work through. Again, not translated, so there won't be a review on this channel, but when you have tea with me, we can talk about it a little bit more than the typical parameters of the channel. I noticed one of the writers in one of the works that Grant Meyerhofer kept bringing up was his love and infatuation with dhalgren by Samuel R. Delany. And God, I love all of the, this is one of those vintage editions. I love all of those editions. But, you know, I'd always been curious about this book and never picked it up. I'm not a big science fiction fan, you know, so it just never really engaged me. But I always knew and heard that there was some experimental writing in here that was special. And 56 pages into an 800 page, or 750 I guess this version. So, but I already see the world building, the beauty of the language, and it's something that I think I'm going to return to every day for as long, until I hit that last page, and every day just sort of savor, if it's 3 pages I read that day or if it's 30. This is helping me a lot right now. It's a dystopian world, so it seems odd, that in this time, in quarantine, and stay at home, that I would be drawn to this, but I'm drawn to the beauty, and I've only scratched the surface. I mean, so I'm excited diving into this, and thanks to Grant for writing an amazing work of ambient nonfiction that then set me down my own little rabbit holes here of places that I wasn't reading, places I wasn't thinking of. Well, I'll give the last little non-translated one, and then we'll talk about my forte, which is translated literature. My birthday is this week. My birthday is on April 15th, which is tax day in America. It's going to be a weird birthday this year. But one of my best friends, or my best friend, in the world, is a musician who actually, he made the opening track for Read the World. I mean, he didn't make it for it. I just clipped a little piece of his electronic music and stole it and popped it on there. I always have a link to his stuff that you can get on Bandcamp, and if you're ever inclined and you like that kind of stuff, definitely do it. But he sent me a book that I knew nothing about. So beautiful. The Drop Edge of Yonder by Rudolph Wurlitzer, who apparently was from the Wurlitzer fortune. He was the, guy who got that money. And so I had heard of a couple of his books, of course, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. And this, I love Dead Man, the movie with Johnny Depp that Neil Young did the music for. I think it's a Jim Jarmusch film. I hope I didn't screw all those 3 things up. Apparently this is kind of maybe an inspiration for that, but it's a Western psychedelic, according to my friend, that I had never read. $2 Radio, one of my favorite presses. So I'm keeping this. I don't know when I'm going to open it, but it's something I'm going to kind of cherish and take my time with. That's how it always is with gifts. This is the same friend, by the way, when I was 30 years old, who, so that was it'll be 8 years ago in 2 days, who got me Savage Detectives for my 30th birthday. And that started me on my translated literature obsession. So he's a good one to pick out books for. 2 things on the translated literature. I'm going to do a buddy read with, looks like 4 or 5 folks on Twitter, which is awesome. P.T. Smith organized it, of The Arid Sky by Emiliano Mung. Translated by Thomas Bunstead from Restless Books. I'll probably do a review of it. I'll probably talk a little bit about some of the things we talk about, but it's not too late to join in. If you find at Derek Main Reads, you can if you go through my tweets and replies, you'll see the group there that's working on this, and I'm pretty excited about it. It looks like it's going to be a thriller, a page turner, and I started reading it, just quickly glanced through it. I'm 10, 15 pages in, and I burned a pot of rice, so, that tells you something. And then the last thing, I actually finished something. Can you believe that? Feebleminded by Ariana Harwicz, translated by Annie McDermott Carolina Orloff from Charco Press. But I'm not going to talk about it because later this week, this is going to be my next review. And I'm excited to talk about it. That's what my reading's been. I don't know. How are y'all? You found anything to dull it? Anything to kind of keep your mind off the pain of it all? It's scary, you know, it's a tough time. I think it's compounded for me personally a little bit with some factors. I mean, politically here in America, we got a thing I'm not into. You know. But the family's all healthy right now, which we feel blessed, obviously. I'm getting some reading in when I can. Been doing some writing, submitting some stuff. It's all terrible, but you should submit your worst stuff. That's my philosophy. Keep the good stuff on a hard drive, password protected. Put the password in your will. While you're alive, stay unpublished. Submit the shit. Kind of joking. I'm 100% joking. It's just easier, right? It's easier whenever you have any sort of artistic or creative endeavor to call it shit, to make fun of it, to not be earnest with it, not tell someone how much it means to you, and how bad you want to share your vision of whatever it is with someone else. How much that desire to connect propels you forward in everything you do, because life is already lonely in 2020, in this age, in this era, maybe always, but definitely so. And now we only enhance the loneliness through our inability to be physically close to others. So yeah, it's easier just to kind of, you know, smirk. But today I decided to try earnestness, to tell you about some stuff I've read that I really like, to tell you what I'm up to have some tea. It makes me feel insecure, makes me scared to post. Who knows if I even will? There's some editing, so you know that that's going to be a stumbling block. But I do appreciate you watching. Cheers. Be good to folks.